I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, but here I am. My name's Mark, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 8 years now. We got married pretty young, both of us ambitious, planning to build a life together, almost perfect on the surface. We didn't have kids yet, but that was always the plan. We were trying to conceive, going through IVF because Lisa had some fertility issues. It was supposed to be this hopeful, intimate journey for us, a symbol of starting our family. At first, things seemed normal. Lisa was high-strung, bitchy even, but I chalked it up to stress from work or the IVF process. She'd snap at me over small things, then act like nothing was wrong. I thought maybe she was just overwhelmed. I tried to be supportive, but honestly, I started noticing little things that didn't sit right. Her phone would be glued to her hand more often. She'd go quiet for long stretches, and she'd get defensive when I'd ask about her day. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I had this nagging feeling she was hiding something. Then, the signs became more obvious. She'd come home late from doctor's appointments that I wasn't allowed to go to, saying it was just routine stuff. But she'd be oddly secretive about what was discussed, and her behavior changed. I'd catch her looking at her phone, quickly hiding it when I came near. Sometimes she'd get defensive, say I was paranoid or insecure. I brushed it off at first, but I kept feeling that something was off. I wanted to trust her, but how could I when I didn't even know what she was hiding? One night I decided to check her phone. I'm not proud of it, but I was desperate for answers. I figured if she was hiding something, I had to see it for myself. I sifted through her messages, her emails, her social media, nothing obvious at first. But then I saw a text conversation that made my stomach drop. It was with some guy named Jake, and the texts weren't just friendly. They were flirty, intimate, even talking about hooking up, plans to meet, and how much they missed each other. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. I felt like I'd been punched in. The gut, how long had this been going on? Was this why she'd been acting so distant? My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. Lisa was supposed to be my wife, the woman I trusted, the woman I wanted to build a future with. And now I find out she's been cheating on me, not just with anyone, but with our fertility specialist, Dr. Simmons. I found out later he's married too, but that didn't matter at the time. All I could think about was the betrayal, the pain, how she lied to my face every day, pretending everything was fine while she was sneaking around with this guy. I knew I had to confront her. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't deny what I'd seen. I waited until she came home from her supposed doctor's appointment that she'd said was routine. I was furious, scared, and heartbroken all at once. When she stepped into the apartment, I was already waiting, my phone in my hand. She looked surprised, then defensive, as if she knew she was caught. I didn't hold back. I threw the phone on the table and asked her point blank, "Who is Jake? What's going on here?" Her face contorted into this bitchy sneer, and she started spitting out lies, denying everything, saying I was paranoid, that it was just a stupid flirtation, that I was overreacting. She told me I was imagining things, that she'd never do anything to hurt me, especially not with someone like Dr. Simmons. She said she was just lonely, that it was a one-time thing, and that it didn't mean anything. But I could see in her eyes she was lying. The woman I thought I knew was suddenly a stranger in front of me. All the trust I ever had in her shattered in that moment. That night was a nightmare. I kept replaying everything, feeling this mix of anger and deep sadness. I couldn't believe she'd been sneaking around, cheating on me with the very person supposed to help us conceive our child. It was like the worst possible betrayal I could imagine, doubly so because it was with someone involved in the most sacred thing in our lives, our future family. I wanted to scream, cry, destroy something, but all I could do was sit there in stunned silence, trying to process what I just uncovered. I knew I wouldn't sleep that night, not after discovering my wife was capable of this level of deception. The days that followed were like living in a fog. I kept going over everything in my mind, trying to piece together how I missed all the signs, the missed calls, her sneaky texts, the late nights. It was a gut punch, and honestly, I felt like I was losing my mind. I'd always thought Lisa was this strong, confident woman, but now I saw her for what she was, someone capable of lying, manipulating, and betraying me without so much as a second thought. The worst part, She kept insisting it meant nothing, that it was just a mistake she'd made when she was weak and stupid. Yeah, right, that just made me angrier. I remember the first real confrontation after I found out. I sat her down, tried to sound calm, though inside I was raging. I had to hear her say it out loud, had to get her to admit everything. I told her I already knew, showed her the messages, and asked her to be honest. She looked me dead in the eyes, that bitchy smirk on her face, and told me I was overreacting. She said Jake was just a stupid flirt, that I was possessive and paranoid, and that I should just drop it and stop acting like a jealous fool. Her voice was dripping with contempt, like I was some kind of crazy stalker for questioning her. I couldn't believe how she was acting. This wasn't some innocent mistake. She'd been actively lying and sneaking around. I felt betrayed on every level, emotionally, physically, even morally. How could she do this to me? To our plans, to our future? I wanted to yell, to break something, but I just sat there, stunned. I remember the way she looked at me, defiant, like she was daring me to do something. That was the moment I realized I was dealing with a different woman entirely. She was manipulative, cold, and she didn't care how much she was hurting me. What hurt the most was feeling like I was losing my partner, my best friend. We had shared so much, our hopes, our fears, the nights we stayed up talking about the future, and now I was faced with this reality that she had been lying to me about everything. Even worse, I was haunted by the thought that all this time she had been sabotaging our chances of having a kid. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I trusted her to be honest, to be faithful, and now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, unfaithful liar who only cared about herself. I was angry, but I was also deeply hurt. I remember feeling like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal and I didn't know how to breathe. My mind kept going back to that moment when I first saw the messages, and I kept questioning whether I'd missed all the signs. Had I been blind? Was I just stupid for not noticing? Every time I looked at Lisa, I saw a stranger, someone I didn't recognize. She kept trying to justify herself, saying she was lost, that she'd been feeling trapped, and that she didn't mean to hurt me. But I could tell she was just trying to manipulate me again, trying to make me feel guilty so I wouldn't do anything drastic. At that point, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living in this limbo of confusion and pain. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not with my heart, not with our future. I kept asking myself, was I going to forgive her? Could I even? The thought of continuing to share my life with someone who lied to me about something so huge was almost laughable. But I also knew I wasn't the kind of guy to just walk away without a fight, not without figuring out what this all meant, what kind of person she really was. So I started planning my next move. Part of me hoped she'd come to her senses, admit everything, and maybe, just maybe, we could work through this. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal of everything we shared. I also knew that I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without consequences. I had to get proof, had to find out if there was more to this than just Jake. And I was going to do whatever it took to protect myself, and if possible, salvage what was left of my dignity. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about my self-respect and what I was willing to accept from someone I loved. After everything that happened, I couldn't just sit around and stew in my anger. I knew I had to dig deeper, get more proof, figure out exactly what Lisa had been up to. I started thinking about how she'd been acting, secretive phone habits, her excuses for late nights, and that bit of her attitude that was downright bitchy when I questioned her. I had a sinking feeling she'd just been lying and manipulating the whole time, and I didn't want her to get away with it. One night, I decided to install a little hidden recorder in the living room. Not proud of that move, but I was desperate. I wanted to catch her saying something incriminating, or maybe catch her talking on the phone with Jake or someone else. I figured if she was sneaking around, she'd slip up eventually. Plus, I wanted to know how deep this rabbit hole went. I knew she'd be paranoid, so I played it cool, but inside I was trembling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. It took a few days, but eventually I hit pay dirt. I was working late one night when I caught her on the phone. Her voice was low but clear enough. She was talking to someone. I immediately recognized her bitchy tone, defensive, manipulative, like she was trying to hide something. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught snippets. "You better be careful. He's just a jealous idiot, and don't worry, I'll take care of everything." That last part made my stomach turn because I realized she was planning how to keep this lie going, how to cover her tracks. The final piece of evidence was the timestamp on the recordings. It matched her doctor's appointments when she was supposedly trying to get pregnant. That was when I finally put it all together. She'd been sneaking around, sabotaging our attempts to conceive, all the while pretending everything was normal. This wasn't some innocent flirtation or a moment of weakness. This was calculated. She was actively working to throw us off track, maybe even trying to ruin our chances for her own selfish reasons. I felt sick. How could she do this to me, to us? I'd always believed in honesty, in being faithful, and now I saw that. She'd been lying to my face for months. The betrayal was crushing. I kept replaying our conversations, her innocent acts, her trust me smiles. God, I'd been such an idiot. She'd lied so convincingly, so smoothly, that I'd almost trusted her again. Almost. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat there with my phone, replaying the recordings, trying to calm myself, but all I could feel was this intense anger. Anger at her, sure, but also at myself for not seeing it sooner. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all this? How did I not know the woman I loved was capable of lying so ruthlessly? I felt humiliated, betrayed, and deeply hurt. I had built my entire future around Lisa, and now I wondered if any piece of that was real. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I had to confront her again, face her with the evidence. I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of it this time. I was done being a fool. I decided I would give her one last chance to come clean, to tell me everything, and then I'd decide what to do. But I already knew. The truth: she'd been cheating on me from the start, sabotaging our hopes for a family and lying every step of the way. The question was, could I ever forgive her? Could I even look at her the same way again? Or was this the end of everything we had? The confrontation I had in mind kept building inside me, but first, I needed to be sure she'd be honest, or at least see that I had proof. I decided I'd finally ask her to come clean, face her with everything I'd uncovered. I told her I needed to talk, that I had something important to say. No accusations, just the truth from her. She looked annoyed, maybe thinking I was just overreacting again, but I didn't care. I was past caring about her feelings at that moment. I just needed her to admit what she'd been doing. When she finally sat down across from me, arms crossed, I laid everything out. Each piece of evidence, every snippet of her phone call, the recordings, the texts. Her face went through a series of emotions: shock, then dismissiveness, and finally that bitchy sneer again. She rolled her eyes, scoffed, and started giving me the excuses expected. She said I was paranoid, that I was reading too much into things, that she'd been stressed with the IVF process, and that's why she'd been flirting with Jake. She claimed it was just sexless, meaningless, a stupid mistake she'd made because she was weak and hopelessly lonely. Her words hit me like a punch. She was trying to downplay everything, act like it was no big deal. I could see her trying to manipulate me again, to make me feel guilty for catching her. That's when I snapped. I told her I wasn't stupid, that I knew she'd been sabotaging our chances of conceiving, she'd been working against us from within. I told her I'd been listening to her calls, watching her lies, that I knew she'd been lying all along. Her reaction: she got even bitchier, started calling me paranoid and crazy, saying I was just jealous and possessive, and that I needed to stop, accusing her of things she didn't do. She said she loved me, that she'd never cheat on me, that I was overreacting because I was insecure about the IVF. But I could tell she was panicking. Her eyes darted around like she was trying to come up with some way to spin this, to turn the situation around on me. That's when I realized she was a master manipulator, and no matter what I said, she was going to keep lying and gaslighting me. I felt this wave of heartbreak crash down on me. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. But it was like I'd been living with a stranger all along. Someone capable of deceit, betrayal, and lying, and not just little lies, but something much darker. That night I sat there, feeling empty inside, realizing that I'd been blind to who she really was. The woman I thought I knew was just a mask, Beneath it was someone cold, selfish, and willing to destroy everything we'd built for her own benefit. I told her I needed some space, that I couldn't be around her right now. I told her I'd be staying with my brother for a few days to think things over. She argued, played the victim, said I was overreacting, that I was ruining everything. But I didn't care. I'd heard enough. I knew I couldn't fix this, not with her still. In denial, still lying. Deep down, I knew I had to start thinking about what was best for me, whether to fight for the marriage, try to save it, or just walk away. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. All those years, all our plans, the hopes for a family, all of it felt like a lie. It was no longer about trust. It was about survival. I realized I was at a crossroads, and whatever decision I made next would change everything. I just hoped I had the strength to face whatever came, because I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Not by a long shot. The days after that confrontation were a blur. I stayed at my brother's place trying to process everything. The shock, the anger, the heartbreak, it was all hitting me in waves. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her bitchy smirk, her dismissive attitude, the way she lied with such ease. I kept replaying our conversations, trying to find some way to make sense of it all, but the truth was, I felt completely lost. How could the woman I loved turn into someone so cold, so manipulative? Meanwhile, Lisa kept texting me, trying to apologize, deny, and manipulate her way back into my good graces. She'd send long messages claiming she made a mistake, that she still loved me, and that she'd do anything to fix this. But every time I read her words, I felt nothing but disgust. I could see through her lies now. I knew she was just trying to save herself, to spin it so I'd forgive her. That wasn't going to happen. I was done being played. One evening, I decided it was time to get some real answers. I went back home, knowing I needed to face her face to face. I made a plan to bring the evidence I'd collected, screenshots, recordings, everything. I wanted her to see I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. When she opened the door, her face lit up like she expected to apologize and fix things, but I just stared at her coldly and said, "We need to talk, and I'm not leaving until I get the truth." She tried to act innocent, but I cut her off. I laid out everything, her secret phone calls, the texts, the recordings of her planning with Jake. Her face turned pale, her bravado crumbling. She tried to deny everything again, but I wasn't having it. I just kept showing her the proof, making her realize she couldn't twist her way out of this one. Her words started to falter as she realized I wasn't going to buy her lies anymore. That's when she finally broke. Her bitchy mask cracked, and she spat out some of the most bitter, manipulative words I'd ever heard. She said I was a jealous idiot, that I'd ruined everything for being possessive, and that she deserved better than to be accused of cheating over a few flirtatious texts. She told me I had no right to judge her, that I was just insecure because I couldn't give her what she really wanted: attention, love, validation. It was like she was trying to turn everything around, make me the villain in her story. But I wasn't falling for it. I just looked at her, feeling emptier than ever. I told her I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I said I was done trusting her, done trying to make sense of this mess. I told her I was going to talk to a lawyer, that I was considering what my options were. I knew I couldn't stay with someone who'd betrayed me on this level, who'd actively worked against our future, sabotaging our chance at a family just because she was too selfish to be honest. That night, I slept badly, but with a kind of relief. I'd finally faced her truth, and I'd taken the first step toward healing myself. I knew I'd have to make some tough decisions, but I also knew I'd survived the worst part. Finding out the woman I married wasn't the woman I thought she was. The pain was still there, but I was starting to see a way out. One thing was clear: I would never forgive her. Not for this. Not for betraying everything we'd built. I was going to take control of my life now, no matter how hard it might be. In the end, I decided to file for divorce. There was no way I could stay with someone who had betrayed me so completely, who had actively worked against our future. It hurt more than I can put into words, feeling like I'd been living a lie for so long, and now losing the woman I thought I knew. But deep down, I knew I had to prioritize myself. I had to rebuild from this wreckage. The legal process was messy and painful. Lisa fought every step of the way, throwing tantrums, trying to manipulate the situation, but I stayed firm. I had the evidence, I had my dignity, and I wasn't going to let her turn this into some twisted game. It took months, but finally I was free. The divorce was finalized, and I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Part of me mourned what we lost, but another part was glad to be rid of the deception. Living through this has taught me a lot, mainly to trust my gut. I ignored a lot of warning signs because I wanted everything to be perfect, and that was my mistake. I learned that sometimes the person you love the most can turn out to be the person capable of the deepest betrayals. And most important of all, I learned that I am stronger than I thought. I survived this, and I will keep surviving, no matter how hard it gets. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, here's my advice. Don't ignore those little signs. Don't dismiss your gut feelings. If someone is secretive, manipulative, or lying, pay attention. Because once trust is broken, it's almost impossible to recover. And remember, your worth isn't defined by someone else's betrayal. You deserve honesty, respect, and loyalty. If you don't get that, don't be afraid to walk away. It's painful, but it's also freeing. Now I'm trying to rebuild my life. I'm focusing on myself, on healing, and on finding happiness again. It's not easy, but I know I'll get there. I hope whoever reads this learns something from my story, to be cautious, to be strong, and to never settle for abuse, lies, or betrayal. Life's tough enough without someone tearing you down from within. I'll always carry the scars from this betrayal, but I refuse to let it define me. I'm moving forward, and I'm finally starting to believe I deserve better.